Welcome to the 24th edition to the Speakeasy Dwellers podcast. It is I, your host, Jared Blazik, once again blessing your ears with my lovely voice and my plethora of topics that it's actually been quite a bit since we've last talked. Um, I know I've been trying to record this episode for a while now and just being able to gather my thoughts, but one of the downsides of living in a somewhat better mental state is the fact that I don't really have a lot to talk about sometimes. And I know there was supplemental stuff like all the drama with all the girls, which is still somewhat in character for my personality, as I've come to realize. But, even that comes to subside when you kind of remove these people from your life in some way, shape, or form. So then you just run out of stuff to talk about because you're not constantly in battle with your surroundings, and you kind of live in this limbo area where nothing really interesting happens. So you can't really challenge not necessarily challenge anything, but you can't really say, oh, X, Y, and Z happened. This is how it's making me feel. This is what I'm going to do about it. Like, the thing is, X, Y, and Z already has happened. I have already expressed my emotions about, said events, but these events haven't occurred again. So, just, it doesn't really provide a lot of material for me to be talking about for more than 5 minutes. Now, something that I have been trying to somewhat explore is inviting people over to talk, because I know I was having a conversation with my good friend Abby the other day after we went shopping, and it was just all these stuff that I've wanted to talk about and have tried to talk about in some way, shape, or form. I just haven't been able to have a conversation with myself as what I'm trying to do right now. Like, I'm having a conversation with me and my screen. Now, when you're listening to this, I'm having a conversation between me and you, but you can't really respond to it, so it's more like just a one-way form of information. I don't really receive feedback unless someone slides up on the story. Then I receive feedback. But in the moment, your feedback doesn't really change what I'm about to say next, so that's why it's just one-way information. But one of the difficult things about having this one-way information is that I need to figure out how to have a conversation with myself without the aid of another opinion and creating that kind of discourse, the rubbing against each other, and just getting multiple different perspectives on a certain subject. And instead, what I'm forced to do right here is have that kind of conversation, but have it just with myself. You feel me? I mean, I haven't said you feel me, but I'm not going to get a response back of whether you actually feel me or not. So, but man, the month of March. So, as you may or may not know, the month of March is host to one of the biggest sporting events in American sports, for lack of a better descriptor. And it's host to the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments, also known as March Madness. Basically, they choose 64 teams, yada, yada, yada. They play it out, and then there's like a champion at the end of the year. And one of the things that they do is they have pep bands that play and support along with the spirit squads, and they'll go out and support the team wherever they go. And what does that mean? That means we fly out, we bus out, and we travel and stay with the team in all these different exotic locations. Exotic being a very liberal term. I mean, I wouldn't really consider the city of Pittsburgh a very exotic and much desired place to be, especially during the winter, which it really felt like. Which it's weird because it's like in the middle of spring, I never saw above 50 degrees there, so it was basically winter in Pittsburgh. So first week of March, it was spring break, and in that we had a uh, men's basketball game against Florida, which we won. Scarily, we won. And then that Wednesday, we had a game against Tennessee, which we ended up losing in a tragic way. Uh, and then during that week, there was also the women's SEC tournament, which that was hosted in Greenville, but I wasn't assigned to that band. So I had to stay home and watch the games on my TV. So next week we have school, but guess what happens to be the next week? The men's SEC tournament for basketball. So they ship me out all the way to Nashville, Tennessee, and I stay there for a couple days. We win the first game against Arkansas, and then we lose by like 36 to Auburn the day after. And so we came back probably, I think that was like Friday afternoon, something like that. Friday afternoon sounds about right. Yeah, give or take. So missed pretty much all but the first my Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. So I only made the Monday of my Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. So I have not made my Tuesday, Thursday classes. So I go through that entire week, right? No big deal. Next week comes by and I commit to joining the men's basketball team in Pittsburgh as they take on the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament. That requires me to fly out on a Tuesday, which, oh my gosh, we didn't get the itinerary for that entire day, for that entire week, until the morning we left. Like, I didn't even know we were even leaving the next day, but I already had my bags packed and everything. It was basically just, work on it on the fly and keep an open ear on when schedule changes because schedule changes were so prone and it was just so anxiety inducing, especially for someone who likes a little structure in their life. No bueno, no bueno. So that happens. We lose the first game. Tragic. We go home, but it was nice to be able to get away from Columbia, as I'll explain a little bit later. It's nothing bad. It's mostly a mental thing that's been going on recently, and I can't really stop myself. But oh well, we'll work through it together. Well, together being by myself. So, and that was last week. I only made my Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes again. And then this week, I have the women's Sweet 16 Elite 8, which they're shipping me out to Albany, which that is nice because I get to visit family, which is much needed during this time of the year. Definitely a privilege that I will not take for granted. Um, and so I'm going to be shipping out tomorrow morning. So late night for me. It's about 11:46 currently at night. So once I'm done finishing this podcast and then editing everything, I'm going to publish, and then I'll just let it simmer overnight, and finalize everything in the morning before I hop on the jet up to up to Albany. But thankfully, this week I was able to make my Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, and then my Tuesday, Thursday classes, because we leave tomorrow, which is Wednesday, right? So, oh my gosh, there is so much goddamn material I am missing because I have committed to this part of my life, right? I have basically not, I went to a class for the first time today that I have not been to since the month of March started. And that is crazy to me that you can legally miss pretty much an entire month of school because you do a university authorized event. And it's not helping my mental health whatsoever when it comes to studying, doing work. Like one of the weird things about going off to these places is that it often feels like a field trip and a break from school, but then you realize that you're a college student and professors don't like giving breaks to people who need them. So in my downtime, instead of being able to go out and explore the areas, I'm forced to sit in my apartment, not apartment, my hotel room, and just sit on my computer to do homework. Like that is just not a way you really want to live a life when you're going out. So people say it's a field trip, but they'll slowly realize that it's not the same field trips that you go on when you were in like high school or middle school, where it was basically a free day and didn't care about anything. You didn't even have to bring your backpack to school. That's how free it was. But I digress. So that's been the month of March for me. And if y'all remember from last time, that would be episode 23, aka In Between. What a badass title that was. I briefly mentioned about a girl who asked for quiz answers from me, right? And I briefly went through the history with me and her, and I was overly pissed off with her. She wasn't sensitive. And I mean, I never mentioned that I was uncomfortable with everything, so that I will take the blame for that. I never mentioned that I was uncomfortable with anything that she talked about. But at the exact same time, you said that you didn't want to tell me, and then you tell me it anyway. So it's a whole entire situation. So me and her don't talk for another month. And the situation for me academically with how behind I am in learning material is so bad that I reached out to her today asking her for help because that is how lost I am with all this different material. Like it was so awkward for me trying to reach out to her because of course we didn't really end up I mean I wouldn't even say we ended up on good terms. We didn't even end off on any terms. It was kind of like, hey, why are you acting weird? Did I do something wrong? And I was like, yeah, maybe. And then she just didn't respond to any of that. So, and then the fact that she's actively ignored me in public also doesn't really help that fire at all. But unless one of us has to man up and actually discuss about what's going on, and I don't know if that's going to be me, because I feel like it has to come down to me, but I really don't want to be put in that situation where I'm going to be the one that asks the tough questions, because then that puts all the pressure on me being able to handle the situation properly, handle it emotionally, be able to ask the hard questions without being overbearing. And it's just a whole ordeal that you try to plan for in your head, but it just doesn't come out right. You feel me? Like you can plan for as many different situations and as many different scenarios as you can, but there are just some situations where you just gotta wing it on the spot and take the punches as they come. And I feel like I'm not really the good idea. I'm not really a great guy when it comes to making stuff up on the fly and being able to improvise. I like having structure. I like having set answers. I like just rigidity when it comes to conversations. And the less I have to make up and less I have to flaunt my personality, so to say, the better. And that's what I feel like this conversation is going to be. Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to say the right thing. You know, there's people who are able to have these kinds of conversations with others, and there's those kinds of people that just know what to say. And every single time they open their mouth, you already know that they're going to give you the most comforting words. They're going to say the right thing at the right time. And I just don't have that sense of security in my own speech. Like, I feel like I might say something insensitive, or I might bring up something unnecessary that might escalate the situation. And and in this case, I feel like I might say something that just might permanently ruin my image. What permanently? Oh, I already said permanently, but like my image with them, with her, and I feel like at the end of the day, the blame's gonna be put on me for the reason why everything fell apart. And I don't want to be the reason why relationships fall apart. I don't want to be the reason why friendships have falling outs. If anything, I'd rather be the other person. But, you know, there just comes a time and place where you have to put your foot down and be like, hey, let's have a conversation. Just fair warning, I'm not entirely comfortable with being able to talk on the fly, but I just want you to have an open mind and an open ear to whatever I have to say. And if I do push in some way, shape, or form, please speak out and tell me, hey, that's a boundary I don't want to cross. Please don't bring that up. Or maybe it's like, hey, can we elaborate more on that? Can we talk more about this one specific part? Because I really want to work on having a better friendship. And with any good friendship, there comes conflict. Like, if you have a friendship and you have zero conflict whatsoever, either you're delusional, you're dead, or you just live in an alternate universe. Like, I don't think I've been in a single friendship that I currently have right now that hasn't had a single bit of conflict where one of us had to put a foot down and or be able to have a conversation on what each other actually wanted in like how we want to be perceived in each other's lives, so to speak. Like I'm trying to think of a couple situations. Um, like back in high school, during my freshman year of high school, I ended up asking out a girl for the first time in my life, and she ended up rejecting me. What I did not realize was after she rejected me, she sent a conversation history that me and her had and sent it to our group chat. And then that group chat sent it to everybody else. So by the time I got to school the next day, everybody knew what exactly I did and then proceeded to get bullied about it for the next 3 months, right? And I mean, when you do something embarrassing like that, when you open up, there has to be some level of, ha ha ha, just laugh about it. But there comes a point where it no longer is a joke and it takes on a whole entire personality of its own. And it's hard talking about because that was a very low point in my life. I never once been bullied before, and being able to express a vulnerability to someone and then that person exploiting that vulnerability and using it to, you know, make a mockery of me, it was a blow on my self-esteem and on my mental health. And I felt isolated. I felt like I couldn't go to anybody because everybody that I could go to would make fun of me. And then at one point, someone ended up stepping in and started saying, "Hey guys, it's not funny anymore. Obviously this is really he's really hurt by it. So let's stop." And I'll never forget. It was Cody, the guy who I said I would start this podcast with, who you've probably heard in the first 10 or so episodes of this podcast. He was the first person to be like, "Hey guys, maybe we should stop because it's no longer a joke. He's no longer laughing, and you guys see how his mood has shifted as the month has gone by, right?" So, um, so that really defined our friendship then. And then there was a couple other things. Um, let's just there's a lot of different things that I could think of for examples that it's just trying to relive those situations is hard because you have to go into a dark place in your mind and try to reimagine what it was like feeling all those emotions in that situation and just hearing that information and just trying to work through it even though you know you're powerless to change anything, right? And I think that it it segues fine into some recent happenings that I've been having. So my my ex, right? I hate to be mentioning them, but it's a self-eating, self-poisoning, self-inflicting burden on myself that just randomly chirps in my head, being like, "Oh, she's probably met someone nice. Hey, you're a real asshole to her." Or, "Hey, you know, if you did something better, maybe y'all would still be together." Right? It's just these little voices of intrusive thoughts that enter my head that I can't say no. Back off, you know you're wrong. Because I know deep down inside of me, there are partial truths to every single one of those statements. And it pains me. It pains me to understand that I can't just say, no, you're wrong. I have to sit there and be like, well, you know, you're not entirely wrong. I'm not going to say you're right. I hate to admit that you're right, but I'm not going to say you're wrong either. And there's just little instances where she just randomly gets brought up, or I randomly think of her, and it's just like, how in the world did I meet such a person who turned from such a nice and bubbly figure, who I fell in love with, to just such an insensitive brat who cared nothing about but her own self-interests. And once she understood that her self-interests were in conflict with my mental state, she said, "Oh, I don't think I'm ready to have a relationship, and I don't think we should be together." And it was like, "Oh, it's not you, it's me." And it's just like, do you know how avoidable this was if we just talked? And the thing is, she hated talking because every single time we talked, as I previously stated, I attacked her in some way, shape, or form. I brought shame on whatever ideas that she started having, whatever habits she started developing. And I felt terrible that I was alienating this person just because they lived a different life and they thought differently than me. And it really makes you think, if I wasn't so alienating of them and their ideas, would things have gone differently? And the self-realization I keep coming to is no. Things would have probably ended the same, but it would have been a lot more of a slow burn. Like, I don't know if I really could handle her. Like, everything else about her, I could handle. You know, the weird ass car that she had, the fact that she couldn't listen to a song all the way through, the fact that she had some really questionable friends. I could handle that, as I've been able to show in just in this meadow ground that I'm currently in limbo with. But the one thing that she picked up that I will never be able to forgive her for was vaping. And I know I'm not really in a majority opinion there, as I've been hit on about it before, but I really just don't like vaping. I think it's poison for your lungs, it's addictive, and it's unattractive. Like, people back in the 1900s would smoke, right? It was a social thing. Everybody smoked, and nobody knew of the bad consequences that it brought. And when anti-tobacco laws started coming in and they started restricting people on when smoking, and smoking, all these different health risks started popping up, people assumed that it was Nazism trying to take over the government and take away their freedom and rights in order to smoke. But nowadays, we are more educated on the negative impacts that smoking creates. And so less and less young people smoke, and you'll see more and more older people, with the extent going towards millennials, less and less of them, or actually more and more of them, smoke compared to people beyond the 2000s, or yeah, beyond the 2000s, who rarely smoke. You won't see a lot of kids smoke, and for people who do see kids smoke, people alienate them. They think of it as an unattractive trait, and it's probably relationship breakers for most people. Now, what has kind of filled in this void of smoking cigarettes? Vaping. And vaping markets its entire thing around, oh, you're just puffing steam. You're just puffing air. But what people don't realize is that you're pumping flavored air into your lungs. And you're supposed to tell me that that's supposed to be good for you, that that's healthy, that that's natural. You're pumping nicotine and flavors into your lungs, and you can't get off of it either. You say that you can quit anytime. You can quit anytime you wanted to. But yet I see you puff almost every other day. Like that is not an addiction. That maybe it's I just don't understand how you could go into that and say, "Oh, I can quit every anytime I want to," and then still do it every other day. My brother in Christ, that is an addiction. You are addicted to it. Unless you can prove to me that you can go away from it for over a month and not have any negative consequences whatsoever, then you can tell me that you can quit anytime. Like, I haven't drank a single ounce of alcohol since Valentine's Day. And one of the biggest things that people had about my alcoholism issue is the fact that they said I wasn't drinking healthy. And they said that I was getting addicted to it, that I was becoming an alcoholic. But I have alcohol in my fridge. I still got I probably got two, 3 shots worth of whiskey in there, and then probably half a bottle of Malibu. I can drink that whenever I want to, but I have pledged to myself that I won't drink. I mean, I probably will drink eventually. Like my self-mandated sobriety won't last forever. But I think it's kind of cool that I can say, hey, you know, shut the fuck up whenever you say that I can't quit whenever I want to, because look what I'm doing right now. I have been sober for over a month, so I have beaten the alcoholism allegations. So you can't say shit about my drinking habits, right? I am proud of that, and y'all should be too. I don't want to hear any slander about my alcoholism issues because I don't have any because I've beaten every single one of them. Anyways, but there are just certain aspects in relationships that when one person changes drastically, that directly conflicts with another person's personal issues. It makes it very hard to have a conversation about it because on one end, you have a person who has already expressed that they do not appreciate that kind of lifestyle, and then you understand that, but you really want to take this alternative lifestyle. So now you're two in conflicts. So at the end of the day, one has to yield. Either the one person who doesn't appreciate the lifestyle laxes his um, laxes his morals in order to incorporate this new lifestyle into their life, and then you have the other side where that person either has a choice to commit and leave the relationship or decommit and still be able to hang out with that person and still be able to have that healthy, good relationship. But at the end of the day, you're denying someone a part of who they are or a part of what they would become, right? Which is just it's a negative positive whenever you think about it. Or in the terms of vaping, it's a positive positive if you think about it one way. It's a whole entire thing. But it's just being able to talk and have communication with someone is a very important quality that I look for when it comes to relationships. And being able to talk out problems, it only works out if the other person is willing to talk and have a conversation. And if you're not willing to have a conversation or talk about it, then we might as well not even exist. Because what the hell am I supposed to do when I have a problem and I can't talk to you about it? And what happens when you have a problem and you can't communicate to me that you have a problem? So I just make the situation worse, and then it bubbles, bubbles, bubbles up, and then you feel like you can't take care of it anymore. And that you have to be, oh, I'm doing this for my own good. He's not treating me right. And it's just like, have you communicated these issues to them? And if you say no, then I'm sorry, that's your fault for not being able to communicate properly of what you guys wanted in each of your respective lives. And the people who are able to communicate best are people who are able to live happier and healthier lifestyles because they're able to understand what each other wants and how they're going to adjust their lives around making sure that each other is happy and each other's ambitions and goals are nurtured and taken care of. It's like raising a relationship is like raising a child. You have to understand that there's going to be some awkward points where they're going to go through some phases. But as the parent, you have to sit there and be like, if my child is really passionate about that certain aspect of their life, why should I deny them that opportunity to be able to explore that? Because if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not meant to be, something will happen where, s- some other life goal will take more priority. Like for me, my family wasn't really musically talented. I mean, my dad, the most in his family was his brother played the trombone. And for my mom, she took piano lessons when she was a kid. So none of them really took on musical careers or musical passions outside of their childhood. So when I came along and I expressed an interest to playing the French horn, they were on board and they supported me with boundless attention, just boundless love and passion for what I was doing. And they nurtured that aspect of my life. And I can't really imagine my life without music. I mean, hell, I was just explaining earlier in the March Madness stuff where I'm going to all these different places because I play an instrument and because I'm part of the marching band and the athletic band for this university. And I get paid for this too, which is also really cool. So just you just have to I don't know how I'm gonna wrap this all up, but I I feel bad about the girl who I was an asshole to for the conversation because she told me stuff that I shouldn't have heard. Her name is Megan, by the way. For those of you who, because I know some of you were getting a bit confused with the names. So the girl's name is Megan, and it's just like I feel like sometime between now and the next podcast, I need to reach out to her and be like, "Hey, can we just talk? I apologize for everything that I've said and done to you since this semester has happened, and can we just have an open conversation about what you think the problem is? Because I know what the problem is, but you seem to be somewhat oblivious to it. So I want you to kind of imagine what the problem could be, and then we can have a conversation around that. Rather than me telling you what the problem is, I'm going to have you kind of figure it out for yourself, and then we'll build on it as we go. I think that's a really healthy way in order to deal with conflict. And hopefully, throughout all of it, we become better people. But if worse comes to worse, then that would just be very, very sad to let that part of my life go. Um, let's see. Is that is that all I really want to talk about? I think that may have been it. Um, yeah. Thank y'all for watching and or listening. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe even share the video with someone. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? And if you're listening on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, one of the things that I've joined recently is there's a an anonymous basically Twitter website, not Twitter website, but Twitter app where different communities can basically communicate with each other and do posts anonymously. And it's called Yik Yak. And I was able to build uh an enough of a presence on Yik Yak that I ended up getting invited to this exclusive community that I call the Deep State. I call it the deep state of Yik Yak. And basically, it's all these emoticons. We all have this group chat together. And one of them, the Yik Yak admin, name is actually I can't say. I'm pretty sure I signed an NDA about all that shit. Um, commented on the fact that I had a podcast and she liked listening to it. So it's like, oh, okay, thank you. And then all of a sudden, all the rest of them were like, wait. You have a podcast? You know, some of them made fun of me. It's like, ha ha ha. Yes, it's very on brand for me to have a podcast. I got a lot to say. I've said a lot of wild shit in my life. And sometimes I just really want to vocalize and have conversations with myself about what I think about all this stuff. So one of them was like, "Hey, you know, if you put it on Apple Podcasts, I'll definitely listen to it." So I was like, "Okay, I mean it's on Spotify, but I'll figure it out." So turns out the Spotify link that I have has an RSS feed that I'm able to attach to an Apple podcast and basically upload for free. So very nice, very nice, very nice. So we'll see what they think of this. If you're listening from the deep state, uh, thanks for listening in. Hopefully, you have a lot to talk about in the group chat about my different views on aspects on life and other stuff. But but yeah, so that's why I'm now also on Apple Podcasts. So double thumbs up, smiley face, woohoo, clap clap. So if you're listening to this on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, um, thanks for listening. I know it's kind of a weird thing to do to listen to me on all these different streaming websites, but you know, it's nice to have little video or audio diaries of how I'm thinking and how I've been able to mentally grow through all these different situations. Yeah, it is getting late. It is 12:16. It is Wednesday morning. So, with that being said, thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for listening. And if I don't see you again, good morning, good evening, and good night. Bye bye.